All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Friday again, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week so far. If you missed it, we did do an instant reaction to the first preseason game of the 2024-2025 NBA season between the Boston Celtics and the Denver Nuggets. Did a lot of film in that one too, so go a little bit further back in the feed and you'll see that. Today's show, we are continuing our season previews, power ranking style, with number 6, the Philadelphia 76ers. And then I have a mailbag with a bunch of good questions from you guys at the tail end of the show. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at @_JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. Don't forget it's helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front as well. And then last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments so we can keep hitting them throughout the remainder of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. So number 6, the Philadelphia 76ers. A lot of roster turnover. Lost from last year. Mo Bamba, Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, Tobias Harris, Buddy Hield, DeAnthony Melton, Campaign, and Paul Reed. Added for this year, Andre Drummond, Paul George, Eric Gordon, Reggie Jackson, Caleb Martin, Isaiah Mobley, Lester Quinones, Guershon Yabusele, and Jared McCain, a first-round pick in this year's draft. So of the players who played minutes in the playoffs for the 76ers last year, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre, and Kyle Lowry are the only 4 players returning to this year's roster. So let's do a little depth chart. We're going to talk a lot about the roster with this particular team because it's really difficult to tell what they're going to look like until they get on the floor because it's all new players, right? At the guard spot, they have Tyrese Maxey, Reggie Jackson, Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, Jared McCain, and Lester Quinones. On the wing, these are like thinner, like kind of like perimeter-based forwards, guard forwards. Paul George, Caleb Martin, and Ricky Council, who's a young player that I really like. At the forward spot, Kelly Oubre, KJ Martin, Guershon Yabusele, and Isaiah Mobley. And then for centers, Joel Embiid and Andre Drummond, but obviously some crossover. A guy like Guershon could play the 5 if Embiid is out on any given night. He could play backup 5 a little bit. So who's going to start? We know Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, and Joel Embiid are going to start. Those are 1, 3, 5. In my opinion, I think Paul George is best fitted as a 3. So you need a 2 and a 4. And if Tyrese is your skill guard, you want like a bigger, stronger guard that can defend guards playing next to him. I think that's Caleb Martin. So I think he'll probably end up starting at the 2. Kelly Oubre is by far the best 4-man on the team. So I'd go with him. So I think it'll end up looking Tyrese Maxey, Caleb Martin, Paul George, Kelly Oubre, and Joel Embiid. Nice mix of perimeter defense, shooting, scoring talent, that sort of thing. Not bad. It's an interesting lineup to look at. Only thing that could get a little tricky is Caleb and Kelly can both be a little inconsistent shooting the ball. But Tyrese, Paul, and Joel are all great shooting the ball. And I do think you could swap guys in and out depending on the matchup and what you need. Tons of flexibility for bench units. You know, you want to try to keep 2 of the 3 stars on the floor whenever is possible. Need to have shooting next to Draymond. So, like, this is where Guershon Yabusele, I think, becomes really important because if you play any of the other forwards, like a KJ Martin or Kelly Oubre next to Drummond, you can go run into some serious spacing issues. Guershon shot the ball really well with France. Got 1.20 points per jump shot in all the FIBA games this summer. 1.28 points per jump shot in 186 reps with Real Madrid last year. So really good catch and shoot guy. I think that's an interesting front court, that pairing of Guershon and Andre Drummond. I think that could be really interesting, especially with Tyrese Maxey and Paul George on the floor for like non-Embiid lineups. As far as like other bench groups, I think you could probably look to pair Reggie Jackson and Paul George. That duo played over 1,600 possessions together in 2021 with the Clippers, and they had a good net rating together. They've got some experience with a little 1-2 punch between the two of them. Let's zoom in on some specific characteristics of this team. Their ball handling. How many guys do they have that can run action? Like guys that you trust to dribble the ball and create shots for others. Tyrese Maxey I have on this list. Paul George obviously on this list. Reggie Jackson, Kyle Lowry, and then some end of the bench guys too, but guys that I don't think will be in the rotation. So there's 4 main ball handlers that you have around Joel Embiid, right? I think that's more than enough for this team, especially playing with Embiid. This is not a team that moves the ball a ton. Last year, they were 25th in assist percentage. They do run some 5-out concepts, but now the talent is higher this year. So I wonder if they'll run more 5-out concepts just because You don't want to just heavily rely on Maxey and Embiid two-man game. You want to have some side-to-side flow, especially with Paul George out there. But in the past, the majority of their possessions basically came down to Maxey and Embiid two-man game or Embiid post-ups. It's very much like a brute force type of attack. But they do have 5-out concepts in their offense, and I would like to see them explore that a little more. That said, I think they have plenty of ball handling for the style of offense that they want to play. Shooting. All three of their stars are great shooters. Reggie Jackson is a good catch and shoot guy. Kyle Lowry is a good catch and shoot guy. Eric Gordon is a good catch and shoot guy. Caleb Martin shot well when he was wide open, but struggled against contests. Kelly Oubre is not a good jump shooter. He was below 32% on catch and shoot jump shots last year. KJ Martin's not a good jump shooter. Guerschon Yabusele is a good jump shooter. I think that's plenty of shooting, especially at the guard spot. They're definitely a little weak at forward. Guerschon is a guy to keep an eye on there, though. If that specific signing pans out and he can defend well enough as a low man, that kind of solves some of the shooting issues. One of the typical things too, or one of the specific things that I think will help is last year they used Kelly Oubre a lot as their primary point of attack defender. They put him on guards, even in the playoff series, spent a lot of time with him on Jalen Brunson. That ends up taking him out of that low man responsibility, right? Because he's on the perimeter. Specifically for instance, in the past, because they didn't have a really good guard defender that would be playing in that starting lineup, other than Oubre, that if you couldn't imagine putting a guy like Guerschon in that spot, because then as a total lineup, they just didn't have enough perimeter defense, right? But now you can imagine lineups with Caleb Martin on the floor, and this is the advantage of Caleb Martin. He can guard guards. He's like that type of perimeter athlete. That kind of unlocks an opportunity for Guerschon to function more as a low man. And if that works out, his ability to shoot the basketball might be an interesting lineup option for them to look at this year. Again, I think we'll see a lot less of Guerschon than I'm probably hoping, but that's a potential swing factor this year with how well he shoots the ball. Perimeter defense. What does this team look like as a perimeter defense unit? Guards aren't good, but Caleb Martin is really good. And I look at him as kind of like a guard forward hybrid. He's not really a ball handler, but he kind of functions as like a 2-3, 3-and-D guy, right? A D and 3 guy more than 3-and-D guy, but you get the point. But Caleb Martin's a really good option there. Paul George isn't what he used to be, but he's still pretty good. And Kelly Oubre is solid. So I wouldn't say perimeter defense is a strength of this roster, but they should be able to set up a decent base scheme, especially with their starters, because you have Oubre and Martin that you can put on the two best perimeter players, right? Martin's going to guard the best guard. Kelly's going to guard the best forward. You can imagine that base defensive scheme working, right? Like Embiid in a drop coverage, Kelly and Caleb chasing over the top. I think you keep Paul George on the weakest forward that the opponent has and use him more as a low man just to save his legs. And then Tyrese Maxey on the overall weakest offensive player so that he can hedge and recover. I think that'll work fine for the regular season. When you run into teams that have 3 ball handlers, I still like the idea of keeping Paul George as the low man, so I would just put Tyrese Maxey on the weakest perimeter player of those 3. Again, I think that's solid for the regular season. Will they have some issues in the postseason with teams like spacing them out and kind of driving and kicking them? Absolutely. That's always been the case with Embiid, though. That's kind of just the reality of this roster. When you get him in space, he can struggle a little bit. So I don't think there's something you could do with the roster to counter that specifically. That's just going to be something they have to deal with. How about size? Is this team big enough? I think it's a strength. Embiid is huge and does well against all the bully ball centers in the league. He's one of the best at guarding Nikola Jokic as well, should they make the finals if Denver were to get there. Andre Drummond is a massive backup center. Guerschon Yabusele is a massive forward. They're big on the wing. Kelly Oubre's got good size. Paul George has good size. They're a little small and slow in the guard core off the bench, but they do have some trunky, like strong guys like Kyle Lowry and Eric Gordon that can guard up a little bit. Defensive versatility. This is definitely a weakness of this roster, and it's the main reason why I have Philly outside of the top tier contender list. Again, my top 4, like my top tier contenders, and then 5 through 11 are like the if things go right contender. There's 2 main reasons why I have them as like an if things go right contender. One is Joel Embiid, which we'll talk about in a minute. The second piece is their lack of defensive versatility. Like their base scheme should do fine in the regular season in the large sample. I expect them to be at least a top 15 defense, and I think they'll be fine over the 82 for all the reasons we talked about earlier. But there are a lot of teams that could break their base defense by spacing them out and driving and kicking them to death. Boston, obviously, it is an example of that. The Knicks, now that Karl Anthony Towns is there, like if the Knicks play Cat at center, who is Embiid guarding? He's guarding Cat. The Brunson Cat pick and pop could give them massive issues, right? The Pacers, Miles Turner is a pick and pop big, lots of foot speed on the perimeter. Several teams out west as well. So there are some teams in the league that I think are going to be able to break Philly's base defensive scheme and makes them a little bit more vulnerable to specific matchups. But they have Joel Embiid. That is one of the biggest parts of their if things go right. Some of these teams need a trade. Some of these teams need a young rotation player to pop. Some of these teams need matchup luck, as we're discussing the other teams in the if things go right tier. For Philly, they need Joel Embiid to be healthy and ready to rock by April. And they need him to confront and defeat his playoff demons. Once again, he was fatiguing at the end of games last year, shot just 6 for 26 in fourth quarters during the Knicks series, shot just 4 for 14 in the clutch. Philly's clutch offense was bad. They had just a 112.8 offensive rating when the score was within 5 with less than 5 minutes left. And all 4 of their losses in that series came down to clutch situations. And Embiid just wasn't able to leverage himself offensively in those moments, which has been a big part of his playoff history, right? Game 6, super bizarre. You win a crazy game. You extend the series. You're coming back home. Opportunity to send it to 7. And they came out like flat as shit, like just dead. And dropped down. I think they went down by like 22, 23 points in the first quarter. Now, they battled back and they actually took the lead in that game, but they inevitably ended up losing. But like, how is it that in a must-win game at home, you come out that flat again? And that has been something that we've seen with Embiid-led teams over the years. So like, again, it's not just about being healthy. It's about confronting his playoff demons. Joel Embiid has the ability to be such an overwhelming force that Philly's weaknesses wouldn't even matter. That's the swing factor. So what if Embiid just finally has the stars align for him with health and he figures out how to contribute more consistently in the playoffs and he just goes on a wrecking ball tour against the rest of the league? That is the upside. Everything else kind of is what it is. Like Tyrese Maxey is a legit number 2. You guys know how much of a fan I am of his. I think I had him at number 21 in my player rankings, like ahead of guys like Kyrie Irving and Damian Lillard. I'm a huge believer in Tyrese Maxey. I trust him to be great again all year. Whatever your issues are of Paul George as a number 3, I think he's going to be fine. There's not going to be real pressure on him to be great every single night. You can handle some of his inconsistencies as the third best player on the team. I view him within this offense too as like almost like a star version of Michael Porter Jr., really capitalizing on those skip passes that Embiid makes out of post-ups and out of some of his short roll situations. He obviously can run action too. He had an awesome regular season last year before struggling in the postseason. But finally, like again, like when Philly last year, they were like, I want to say they were like 18th or 19th in 3-point attempts per game, 18th, 19th in 3-point percentage. I think they were like 15th in spot up efficiency on synergy. So like Paul George is just a massive influx of talent in off-ball scoring ability. That should help that a lot. I think Daryl did about as well as he possibly could to surround them with free agent talent around those core 3 guys. But Embiid is the key. He's the guy that has the ability to push them over the top. My prediction for the Sixers this year, I think they might run into some regular season issues in the standings just because of the Embiid load management piece. Like Maxey, George, Drummond kind of like framework. If they can hover around 500, then they'll be fine. They'll stay out of the play-in. But like, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these younger, more athletic teams like Indiana, Orlando, or Cleveland, if one of those teams passes them in the regular season standings. So I think somewhere in that like 4 to 6 range is realistic. But recent history tells us that when they get to the postseason, Embiid will probably be banged up, probably be less than 100%, that he'll struggle, and that they'll probably lose in the second round. But Embiid has the power to overcome that history. He has the power to flip the script and carry this team to the trophy. It is on him to prove everybody wrong. TD Tutty taking it to the house, in for 6, whatever you call a touchdown. One thing's for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, from the special teams or defense, we don't care how they score them. We want to bet on touchdowns, and DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown or how many TDs will be in a game. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. The game I have my eye on this week is Ravens-Cowboys. I think both teams need that game badly. I'm a Cowboys fan too. Very predictable start to the season for the Cowboys, but I'm really, really excited for this weekend. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. That's code HOOPS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, let's get into our mailbag. We're going to be covering the Sixers really closely this year. It's just hard to really learn too much about them until we watch them play. First question. Hey, Jason, wanted to know what you think about Steph and Steve Kerr emphasizing that they need to evolve to accommodate their current personnel and young guys, specifically mentioning simplifying things and implementing more structure. What could this change look like in your opinion? How much sense does it make when considering their offseason additions seem to be perfect for the current system? How do the comments about more structure and play calls align with some of your previous mentions of the Warriors being at the top of the league when it comes to running organized offense? So like the Golden State system is so much about making really quick decisions, right? That when you think about guys that haven't played as much over the court, like Moses Moody, for instance, like Kuminga before last year, a lot of the reason why those guys didn't get into the rotation is Steve Kerr didn't trust them in the machine that is the Golden State 5-out offense to consistently make the right decision. So like if you can simplify decisions and make it so that each read is very easy for specific types of players, then you can put yourself in a position where they have a better chance to succeed. I kind of go the other way, though, in the sense that I think a lot of the Warriors 5-out concepts are kind of taking hold elsewhere around the league. And a lot of these guys like Kuminga, guys like Moody, they need to learn how to play in read and react basketball anyway, you know? And so obviously by creating simpler reads, by creating simpler roles, you help in the short term. But at the end of the day, like you mentioned in your question, they brought in some guys that fit the system. The system is a big part of Golden State's success over the years, and those guys just kind of have to learn how to exist within that system. That's the reality of it. What do you think about this starting lineup for the Dubs? Steph, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond, and Trayce Jackson-Davis, surrounding the dynastic duo with athleticism and speed. And if Wiggs can return close to 40% from three with three-point efficiency, and Kuminga continues to score in the 20s, their offense should flow well. And the defensive ceiling they could reach would be extremely high. Love the show. The main issue with that specific lineup is not enough shooting. I think, especially with what we know about Steve Kerr and his penchant for wanting to have guards on the floor. Like, this is a guy who routinely puts 3 guards on the floor. You think he's going to go to 1 guard? Like, that's probably not going to happen, right? Like, that's just the way that he likes to structure lineups. I understand why you'd want to go big. We talked a lot in a previous mailbag about lineup structure for the Warriors. And last year, their 2 best lineups by far were like Steph Clay, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond, and Steph Pods, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond. But I also understand why you maybe don't want to do that the entire regular season, because all of that mileage on Draymond at the 5 could lead to some wear and tear issues, especially at his age. So I understand the idea of wanting to build out a big look. That said, if it's going to be a big look, I don't think it's going to be slotting up with the forwards. I think it's going to be replacing a forward with a big. So like, for instance, I think you'd have to move one of Wiggins or Kuminga to the bench, keep Pods in with the starters, and then put someone like Trayce Jackson-Davis in for whichever forward. So basically going like Steph, Pods, Kuminga, Draymond, Jackson-Davis, or Wiggins, Draymond, Jackson-Davis, something like that, right? And I mean, who knows if Wiggins can handle mentally the idea of going to the bench. That's where it gets a little tricky. But if you're going to go big, I think let's just put it this way. I would be stunned if Steve Kerr didn't start Brandon Podziemski this year. I just think that's the direction he's going to go. He was one of their best plus-minus guys all year last year. There's a lot more that he can get into offensively that he didn't really show last year. I think Pods is going to start. Russ is absolutely not going to be playing meaningful minutes with Murray and starters as a 2-guard. He is a backup point guard and a point-of-attack defender. When he sees starting minutes, it's going to be because Murray is hurt, and he will have Christian Braun or Strawther at the 2. Edit, I generally agree with what Jason is saying, but I didn't like how he characterizes Russ' role on the Nuggets. He isn't a KCP replacement. He is a Reggie Jackson replacement. Yeah, you're right. He is a Reggie Jackson replacement. I never viewed him as anything different. The only reason I discussed his mix with the starters is he will play some minutes with the starters. He did play some minutes with the starters in this preseason game. Malone, even in his media day press conference, specifically discussed the possibility of Russ potentially closing games for them, which would imply that they're at least considering it, right? So, like, again, I was just discussing the possibility of what that could look like with the starters, because we will see bits and pieces of it. Obviously, the majority of Russ's role this year will be in those bench-led units. The thing people aren't acknowledging about Russ and the Nuggets is the situation and culture he's in now. Denver isn't like the Lakers or Clippers. The Nuggets actually are a team and a brotherhood and aren't going to scapegoat Russ like the LA teams did. And Jokic is different than their stars. He empowers his teammates and they want to play hard for him. I believe this will happen for Russ and he'll have a great season. Also, Russ has a skill that Denver actually needs, unlike his last couple stops. Also, nobody on the Nuggets are expecting Russ to come in and be this amazing player like in his prime. He's a Reggie Jackson replacement, and the non-Jokic minutes have been abysmal for so long that even if Russ has his head-scratching plays, it's not like those plays didn't already exist when Jokic isn't on the floor. There's truth to that, and that's why like the risk-reward factor with Russ is makes some sense, right? Like Denver's bench has always been bad. So if Russ comes in and the bench is still bad, that's the situation you've always had, but there's at least some upside there, right? That's the case for it, right? A couple things. First of all, the idea that Russ has a skill set that Denver actually needs, unlike his last couple stops, that's not true. The Clippers have been begging for a point guard forever. The Lakers didn't necessarily have a need for what Russ does, but the Clippers definitely did. And they allowed him to play exactly his style, and it still was the same issues that he had in previous stops. As I mentioned in our film session, and I did those of you guys who haven't seen this, I did a whole film session on the preseason game, and we had a segment where we talked about Russ and some of those mistakes that he makes. And guess what? His first game with Denver looked exactly like just about every other game that he's played in his career. A lot of good, a lot of bad. Awesome driving kick possessions where he creates easy layups and threes, some awesome on-the-ball defensive possessions, getting back cut, getting ran by for offensive rebounds, smoking a bunch of layups. Like that's the experience. It's like that there's not you can blame organizations all you want. By the way, the Lakers are actually a shit show. They had a bad coach. They had a front office that is, not necessarily the most respected in the league, right? Like they have their issues that you could potentially point to with Russ. Clippers, they don't. They have a very good front office, an excellent coaching staff, and they needed what he did. And I watched him with the Clippers, and he made all the same mistakes he made with the Lakers. It doesn't matter how good of a leader Jokic is. It doesn't matter the quality opportunities that he sets him up with. It doesn't matter how good Denver's coaching staff is. It doesn't matter the role that they need him to play. The issues are still there. He's bad at making layups. He's a poor decision maker. And then on the defensive end, he loses sight of his responsibilities off the ball regularly. And until those things change, we all know the good that Russ brings to the table. It's about the bad that cancels it out. Hey, Jason, you didn't get to Mavs Media Day, but I was interested in what you think of the potential upside of Derek Lively. Interesting, the front office's comp for him is said to be Joakim Noah as an elite defensive anchor and for his passing skills. Both him and Kidd during Media Day really emphasized his improvement in trying to dominate the paint and offensive ability and post moves. Derek Lively to me is like the quintessential modern NBA center. I would be shocked if within the next 5 years he's not like one of the top 10 centers in the league. Elite rim protection, the ability to guard in space and switches, the ability to read and react as a 5-out big, meaning like, and he doesn't even need to do this in Dallas, just because they don't really run this system. But like, I think if you were to pick him up and drop him in a 5-out system, he'd look great. But like the ability to dribble at guys and make reads and hit guys cutting, the rolling hard to the rim and providing vertical spacing. He's got good touch. Like I actually think this is a guy that in the long run will make some jump shots and will become a guy that can duck in against a smaller defender and hit a little left shoulder hook or something like that. I think he's a quintessential modern NBA center. I think he's awesome. I think his potential is through the roof. Like I there's no reason in the world why he couldn't be like Jared Allen and do a lot of the stuff that he does for Cleveland in the long run. Again, there's stuff he's got to get to. Jared Allen has that like floater that he hits all the time and the hook that he's really efficient with. He's got good hands around the basket, but I think Lively can build that stuff out over time. The Bucks weren't bad against above 500 teams, though. It was the bad teams that beat them. It was when their lineup inconsistency and bad stagger lineups with poor bench players that led to losses, not their starters. Their starters dominated teams more than any other team in the NBA, including the Celtics, who also played in the weak East. By the way, guys, like this was in regards to some of my comments about the Bucks and their relationship with the Lakers. I had the Lakers a tiny bit above them, one spot, in the same tier of teams. I think the Bucks are the Lakers in the Eastern Conference. Why? The upside is based on their top end talent. Like if you're a Bucks fan, it's like we got Dame and Giannis. If you're a LeBron fan, or a Lakers fan, we got LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The role players are really flawed and one-dimensional, right? Same issue for both teams. The team severely lacks defensive personnel. Same issue for the Lakers as for the Milwaukee Bucks. They were better against the good teams and lost too many games to mediocre and bad teams. Same thing for the Lakers as for the Bucks. They're to me the same type of team in either conference. Lots of upside, but lots of flaws, right? And that's why I have them right next to each other in the standings. The reason why I had the Lakers a little bit above is I thought they were a little bit better. Obviously, the Bucks won 2 more games, but in a substantially weaker conference. The Lakers were a little better against the best teams in the league, and the Lakers beat the Bucks head-to-head twice without LeBron James. So that was the main reason why I gave them that slight edge. Hello, Jason. Do you think Karl Anthony Towns can play the same role for the Knicks, similar to how KP played for Boston for a championship? Or am I crazy to think like that? Appreciate the content as always. So Kristaps Porzingis is a much better rim protector. So that's the thing for Boston for Minnesota, for New York, that Cat could never do that KP does for Boston, right? On the offensive end, though, it's like the identical role. Pick and pop, be an aggressive above the break 3-point shooter, drive closeouts when you see opportunities, and when they switch ball screens and put Jalen Brunson's defender on you, can you quickly duck down to the elbow and score against the switch the way that Kristaps Porzingis can? Porzingis is better, in my opinion, and not from a health standpoint, but when he's actually healthy and available on the floor, he's better at attacking switches. He's a better above the break 3-point shooter. He's a better rim protector. So like KP is just a better player, but Cat's obviously more available. That said, I do think Cat can fill a similar role. And if that optimizes, if that all comes to fruition, it just elevates the ceiling for this Knicks team in a major way. All right, 3 more quick ones. I'm a little confused as to why nobody seems to have considered moving Rudy Gobert to the bench and starting Naz Reid for the Timberwolves. Naz has been a consistently above average shooter and creator for the center spot the last couple of years, and having him in the starting lineup instantly makes the spacing much more competitive, and I feel creates a much more logical rotation. Ant and Randall will have more room to attack the rim, while Randall would also have another option to kick out to on the perimeter. Also on paper, I feel like the guards on the bench would be better served by the defensive presence of Rudy Gobert in the second unit, while also spacing the floor out more so you can have better, cleaner lanes for dunks. I'm not a Timberwolves fan or anything, so I'm not approaching that scenario from the mindset of trying to cope with the trade, but I'm curious what you think, Jason. Is having Gobert come off the bench just completely out of the question? And outside of the media optics of benching a player with such a large contract, what basketball issues do you see that would make this adjustment non-viable? So here's the thing. It's situational. Like you start Gobert. But yeah, like if you're having trouble spacing the floor and Ant and Julius both look really hesitant and uncomfortable and is a late game situation, I could see a version of it where they go, okay, we'll supplement a little extra defense. We'll take Conley out and we'll put Dante DiVincenzo in. We'll go Ant, Dante, Jaden, Julius, Naz for like a key stretch of possessions. Maybe it's a end of the second quarter when you're trying to go into the half on a run, or end of the game in a clutch situation. You absolutely can consider that based on what's going on with the team. But I think you start the game with Gobert. There's also a continuity thing there. One of the things with Rudy Gobert too is like he legitimately is one of the 5 or 6 best defensive players in the world. Like all the criticism about him on the defensive end is literal bullshit. I was critical of him on the game winner from Luka because I thought he made a mental mistake. He took away the drive and gave up the step back 3 when you could trust your help defense there and make a lesser player make a shot instead of leaving the second best player in the world, for a wide open 3 to end the game, basically. Not a wide open, but an easy 3 to win the game. But aside from that specific possession, all those clips of Rudy Gobert getting scored on that were going around, it's kind of BS because on a point per possession basis, he was great in isolation, and he always is. Rudy Gobert is an awesome defensive player. And so there's a certain tone you want to set at the start of games defensively, and it's part of the identity of the Timberwolves. So I would keep him in the starting lineup. But yeah, you absolutely consider benching him for Naz Reid in specific situations if it dictates that. Hey, Jason, love the show. Quick mailbag question. The Timberwolves have too many guards and the Lakers have too many forwards. What are your thoughts on the T-Wolves and Lakers engaging in something around Rui and Nickeil Alexander-Walker? I think that'd be perfect for both parties involved, and the salaries work too. I actually had a similar thought the other day, but the reason why I turned away from it is I think the Lakers need a legit high-level starter. And while Nickeil Alexander-Walker fits a positional need, which is a guard that can defend, I don't think he's quite high-level starter. And so at that point, Rui is actually more important to the Lakers right now, what they do offensively, than Nickeil Alexander-Walker is to the Wolves, or to what Nickeil Alexander-Walker would be for the Lakers if he came over. So it just wouldn't make sense. If you're going to trade Rui or D'Lo, it's got to be for somebody closer to Bruce Brown's ilk, which is a bigger, stronger, more like starting caliber two-way player, right? Now, that would require the Lakers to include draft compensation, but that's kind of the point, right? Like, I think the Lakers should trade draft compensation to get better players back in the deal. So that's why I wouldn't make Rui available for a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But maybe if you're the Timberwolves, you can look to make a similar sort of a deal with a different team that's deep at forward. So like maybe you call a team like Houston that has a ton of guys in their rotation, and you offer them Nickeil Alexander-Walker for somebody like Tyrese, for instance, and you bring back an athletic forward that can help you a little bit. Last question. Hypothetical here. If D'Lo and Reeves are redundant, why were the Lakers so hell-bent on keeping Reeves? He is not a substantially better player than D'Lo. It's a tiny difference at most. The Lakers could have traded Reeves for Caruso, and that would have made the Lakers a much better team with a much better chance at the title. Also, Caruso would guard Murray a million times better, and they have a much better chance of beating the Nuggets. I can see them in the finals with the Celtics, and who knows from there. A couple things. Trading a high-level starter to get a high-level starter kind of defeats the purpose. I do think that D'Lo is close to Austin as a regular season player, but I think Austin is like a chasm better than D'Lo within the postseason. And then it also just makes more sense for the Lakers' timeline. He's younger. He has 2 more guaranteed years on his deal and a player option, although I think he'll drop that and look to extend. But he has 2 more guaranteed years on the deal. Both years are less than $14 million. So from a money standpoint, he's not taking up barely any of your cap while also being a useful starter. I would trade Austin if it brought back like a legit bona fide third star. But he's your only high-level starter next to LeBron James and Anthony Davis right now. So you can't trade him for just another high-level starter. You need to turn a flawed starter, which is D'Lo or Rui, into a high-level starter if you're going to actually dramatically improve the team. All right, guys, that is all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting me and supporting the show. We will be back on Monday with some preseason basketball reaction, as well as another episode of our power rankings. I will see you guys then.